Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It
Woo!
is Wednesday, November 29th. That means it is time for Under the Radar. I'm your host, Chad Sherwood, joined up top here by David Griggs. Below him,
Yes.
John Salika. Right below me here from Bracketeer.org, it is the one and only Rocco Miller back again. Not at a game tonight, amazingly enough, or did you just get back from one, Rocco?
Not tonight, unfortunately, but a big weekend ahead of games, so it's
Uh,
okay.
Yeah.
Big weekend ahead. It was a huge night of games tonight, which is why we're recording this a little bit later than normal. But this is the Under the Radar show, I guess. Stalika, what is Under the Radar?
Well, under the radar, we do not cover the major programs, so we're not going to cover the Power Five conferences, nor do we cover the Big East, the American, the Mountain West, and the West Coast. We don't cover the Atlantic 10, although that's
Not yet.
still up in the air. But judging by tonight's results, they may actually be staying on the main podcast for a
Yeah.
little while longer. But we
Uh,
also do not cover teams like James Madison that are in the top 25.
that's the only team that we're not covering of these other conferences because we covered them in the Monday Night HD report, but by virtue of the fact that they are in the top 25. We do like to start with a feature conference. Before that, before we get to the feature conference, I want to backtrack because you mentioned the Atlantic 10 is not on the show. It was actually here for a while last year. One of the reasons they may not be coming back is because one of their members, Davidson, got tonight to hoist the giant pile of dung that is the Hornet Nest Trophy. So congrats to Davidson on an 85-81 win over Charlotte this evening. Uh, it was
This
great to
is
see. The players were lifting up over their heads at center court. Go back and watch if you don't believe me. That really happened.
yeah, I love this trophy. It is the best trophy in all of sports. I mean, it's not the World Cup, it's not the Stanley Cup, it's whatever the hell this thing is.
But in all seriousness, we do want to go to a feature conference tonight. And uh, Rocco, you sent out a tweet earlier today that made this my choice for the feature conference, and and I even made a little change in our screen here, uh, just so we could see some of these numbers. NCAA currently is using the net as its main metric, but it's been quite a while since they used the RPI. Heading into today, though, the number one team in the nation, if you were still using the RPI, is from our feature conference. Uh, there are the RPI numbers that I've now showing on the screen instead of net just for this week. And the number one team in the nation, the Bradley Braves, at least heading into their game tonight, they did lose tonight. Um, but how about these RPI numbers if we were still using them? We'd have UIC and Bradley both in the top 15 teams in the nation in protected seats. Rocco, is this why we don't use RPI anymore?
Well, it's the RPI has its flaws is a big reason why it's not here anymore. However, one of the things I like about it is it actually I think benefits under the radar teams more than power teams, which is kind of what I was trying to articulate in the email sent to you guys. And I obviously love that and look for angles for that. If it was something that benefited the power schools, I have a strong suspicion that it would maybe still be here. And so, one of the things I really love about the RPI, even though there's certainly a lot to not like, is the fact that you get some extra love for winning on the road or winning neutral games. And I understand when the net comes out and the quad system comes out, it is supposed to be modeled around those factors. It doesn't quite give you the credit for strength of schedule that the RPI does. And I do think there is benefit to that. I do think it's hard for like Bradley to go win on the road on opening night at UAB, win their tournament that I was at, SoCal Challenge, and beat Tulane and UTEP, beating a really good Vermont team by 9. And Utah State has turned out to be world beaters, and they beat them as well. So there's a reason why they got to number one is because 5 of their 6 games before tonight were against quality competition. They won every single one of them. Most of them weren't at home, and if that was extrapolated out for a full season, Chad, I love that.
Yeah, it's real. We're still sort of to the point of an April batting average. It's real erratic, but the RPI in and of itself is real simple. Now, it doesn't have as many data points to be the more data points it has, the more reliable it is. Baseball still uses it, volleyball still uses it,
Yeah.
team sports still use a basic RPI. And I think that it's a good sorting tool for it does what it's supposed to do. It's a general indicator of relative strength, but 75% of it, I know the panel knows this, but in case the viewers don't, is your record and your opponent's record. Well, Bradley's record before tonight was like 1,100%. You can't get any higher. And the record of their opponents, Utah State only lost, Tulane only lost. I mean, you would average out the essentially the winning percentage of each opponent you've played, and the teams that they've played have won a lot of games. UTEP's won a lot of games. UAB really hasn't, and that's 75% of it. So yeah, they're number one because they've beaten teams that have won a lot.
Yep.
The other thing going on with the Valley here is they did start conference play actually last night with Indiana State's win over Southern Illinois. Got into it tonight, and I had a great idea to make the Valley the feature conference when we had two undefeated teams with Bradley and Evansville. We had, you know, tonight kind of the standings got a little bit thrown upside down here in the conference though, with a pair of several notable losses. Evansville got blown out by Missouri State.
Yeah,
Bradley could not get past, actually went down big against Murray State, fought back, but did not have enough to come all the way back. Meanwhile, Belmont won at Northern Iowa. Drake came back and did win at Valpo at least.
yeah.
So somebody at the top of the standings won.
The Bradley game surprised me. Evansville, I think, was sort of like overachieving. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but I just think that what they had done was surprising. But Bradley was legit. I mean, we just looked at their team page. They had won games that were not easy to win, and not that it's easy to go to Murray State, but if you're ranking the difficulty of the games they've played, the game tonight would not be the one you would put at the top of the list, I don't think.
It might be the one at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Honestly. Yeah. But I think the other two teams, though, Sleeka, let me bring you in here. Both Drake and Indiana State did get their wins in their Valley openers, and they are two teams that I think do merit some serious attention here.
Well, let's also keep in mind the Trees were at home when they pummeled Southern Illinois. Drake will get a few extra points for actually winning on the road at Valpo. I mean, let's also keep in mind that when you go back to Bradley, they had to go on the road against a team that's a little more familiar with them as opposed to the 6 teams that they've beaten so far. But another thing that you may notice on the screen that's going to be new this year, also keep an eye on records against tiers 1 through 2 and tiers 1 through 3, because we're not going to see as many opportunities for many of these under the radar conferences against tiers 1 and 2, for example. But my guess is we're going to see a lot of 2 and 3 in the Valley this year.
Yeah, thanks, John. If you're familiar with the show in the past, this is a new little section I added up here in the top left. Records versus tier 1 through 2, and tier 1 through 3. Well, you can probably add that up in your head by looking at the screen, and gives you a little quicker snapshot of it. But Rocco, how about the Valley so far? I think that as you throw Missouri State in there as well, that they're if somebody one or two teams can run away with this conference, there might be an at-large bid possibility here. But if they don't beat each other up too much, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's probably too difficult, and the teams are the margins are too thin between these teams. There's a lot to like about Bradley. I got to see them last week. Really well coached, really good chemistry. But a night like tonight can happen where you go to a Murray State where even though Murray State the last couple of years have been pretty mediocre since McMahon left and Prohm took over, they still only lost 2 home games last year, and that was to Drake and a really good Southern Illinois team, and they beat everybody else at home. So you're in the Valley, you're going to have so many tough road trips, and you're just going to have off nights as well, like you saw with Northern Iowa at home tonight, losing by 20. And if you don't have a solid defense where, Drake maybe has the best chance of anybody because I think they have the most balanced offense defense. But even them, I think they're susceptible to a couple losses, if not more. And I think realistically, the multi-bid thing is something we'll root for, of course, as always. I love Indiana State's system. It's awesome. But I do think they're susceptible to a handful of road losses. So I think big picture, it's going to be a tremendous race. I think actually over half the league right now, they're good enough to be top 50 under the radar, if not more than well over more than half. I think I had 8 or 9 in my top 60 on Monday. So it's a quality top to bottom. The rise of Evansville and Illinois Chicago really helps the strength of the league. And even Valparaiso, even though they lost bad tonight, they've started to show some recent signs of life at 4-3 so far. So I'm very encouraged about the bottom coming up because that helps everybody.
Yeah, here's that UIC profile. Losses to Greensboro and at Cincinnati. Um,
They were
I
right in that Greensboro game. I mean,
yeah,
right in it.
was 1 point loss there. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's another team to kind of keep.
They're
You're right.
playing
Keep an eye
well.
on this
Yeah.
team
Well.
as well. Uh, so there's a lot to like about a lot of these teams here. So
Yeah. Two
I
of the
think this is going
bigger
to be a real good
surprises, two
conference.
of the
Go ahead.
bigger surprises really kind of in college basketball. And it may be short lived. It may be one of those, they had a spectacular November, but that was it. Evansville and UIC, and the fact that they're both in the same league have just been shocking. The fact that I know that they're not beating, protected seeds or anything like that, but the fact that Evansville's winning against anybody is amazing. And they haven't just been all home bye wins either.
Here's the upcoming schedule. Illinois State and UIC will start here Thursday night, get their first game in. Then everybody's playing Saturday and Sunday again in conference play. We'll be jumping back out of conference. Some interesting games. Coming up next week, Tuesday. Bradley at Akron, Evansville at BYU,
Yeah.
and beyond that, St. Louis at Drake on Wednesday. So we've got some interesting non-conference games coming after this first little mini run into conference play this week.
Right. I know we got to get moving. A viewer wanted me, he asked me, and then he wanted us to discuss, do we like, not like, or not care about these early conference games? The reason they do it is so you're not opening your conference schedule during the student break. I, for one, don't care. I don't think it makes any difference. I don't think there's any particular reason to do it or not do it. But what do you all think?
I'll tell you, I think it's a good
Yeah.
reason to do it, so you can get the students there, and you're not playing a conference game when it could possibly be one of your biggest conference games of the season, and the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
And nobody's there,
Yeah.
other than some local alumni.
It's a good debate because if they opened up these two games to more non-conference games, perhaps the Valley could have more chances to build an at-large resume, and just go down to an 18-team schedule for the league. It's tough because I think part of it too is it's really hard. Almost all these schools, except for maybe Illinois, Chicago, and Belmont, being in bigger cities, are in remote locations. Tough to get to locations. Believe me, I've been to a few of them now.
Yeah.
So there, it's not like you're going to get even an Atlantic 10 or an AAC or a Mountain West team to come there. So the way the hierarchy works in college basketball right now, Missouri Valley's coming in as the best league out of all the under the radar. So even if you get an A-Sun team to come there, you're not really moving the needle. You almost better off just playing a league game, but then you start to cannibalize yourself. So it's a really good debate.
This is, especially with the size that we're going to next year with some of the power conferences like the Big Ten and the SEC going up to these 18, 20 team conferences, 18 and 20 team conferences. I've heard some rumblings of trying to lengthen the season actually by a few more games to get more non-conference play in, and maybe allow conferences to play even a 22 game conference schedule. So keep an eye on that in the next couple off seasons here. There may be those chances just by going bigger than 31.
Yeah.
My fear is if they do something like that, they're probably going to increase, I guess, the non-D1 games up to 5 or 6 if they do that, just to fill out the schedule. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the rest of the conferences. We are way behind in schedule already, but that's okay. Let's start things off in the America East, where UMass Lowell's team name has been cut off the screen there. I'm not that certain what's going on there. We'll have to get that fixed at some point here. Let's go over to the America East here, where I think the story is this Lowell team who finds a way to keep winning games, including a win at Stonehill tonight, Griggs.
Yeah, barely beating Stonehill. That game kind of came down to the wire. And I know it was a road game, but like to see them play so well in the one they lost against Arizona State, they were right in there. You would have figured they'd have blown, the Stoners, as we like to call them, off the floor, and they didn't. But they got the win, and 5-1 overall. This program had no real history of basketball success, but the last 2 years, God, they've made strides. They've made as much improvement as probably anybody, and they're one of the front runners this year. Vermont also very good, but yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed especially this year, but last year too, watching this UMass Lowell team.
Yeah, Rocco, and here's both his profiles up here, and it's I think it's going to be a fun conference season here.
These are two
These
excellent
are
teams, fellas. I mean, I think they're borderline both top 10 worthy of UTR rankings. I think UMass Lowell, bringing to the table, guys like Ayindi Hakeem, he put the team on his back down the stretch. I've turned on the last 10 minutes of the game today. That was just one of those situations where a team that expects a lot from itself and just all the success they had last year and bringing so many guys back this year. I don't think it's a game they could have won last year. Stonehill was shooting the lights out. They shot 60% from two today. Had a really, I mean, for Stonehill standards, had a really probably played their best game of the year. And UMass Lowell's just, the confidence and the belief that they're going to get through these tough moments. Not every night is going to go your way. There's going to be a couple other teams we'll talk about tonight that have similar recent games. And that's, to me, the definition of the difference between a good team and a great team. And UMass Lowell showed that. I know that they choked the Arizona State game up 10 late. That's obviously a big stage. I think they learned a lot from that, and they made sure that did not happen here today.
Yeah, they've got at Merrimack next. Merrimack, as we record this, could be on the way to beating Georgetown on the road. But
Right.
Lowell finally on December 12th will get a home game against a D1 school. So they've been doing this all on the road too, which
Yeah, they
is
have.
really impressive.
Really impressive.
Vermont's been doing it at home and on neutral courts. They have one true road game. That's the game they lost at Bradley. So
And Georgia Tech's win last night over Mississippi State helps their resume a little bit as well.
Yeah, it does. Because
and-
they did something Mississippi State didn't. They went to Tech and won.
Another
That's
shout
right.
out to Maine, picking up a road win tonight at Holy Cross. The Holy Cross team that, here they come again. They beat Georgetown earlier this year. And as we've said a few times before, if you're a power conference team, you're being mentioned multiple times on the Under the Radar podcast, that is not good news for you, for the quality of your program at the moment. But here's the upcoming schedule.
Vermont
Lowell at
Yale.
Merrimack.
Big.
Huge Vermont Yale game Saturday. Circle that
That is
one.
real big. Yeah.
Also, keep an eye on Albany, that's been on a winning streak themselves. They smashed crosstown rival Siena earlier in the week, and they'll probably get to a 4-game winning streak, assuming they're able to beat Dartmouth come Saturday.
All right. Slika, over in the A-Sun, I don't know that we have as much to talk about, but go ahead.
Well, we'll try. We have the Jacksonville Dolphins, who actually managed to get, 3 different wins against D1 competition. There was a win at Robert Morris where they had a little bit of a dust up between the teams, where I think they ended up 5-on-5, maybe 5-on-4, because there were multiple ejections because players left the bench. But in terms of quieter games, they also beat Fairleigh Dickinson in that MTE and Robert Morris, and also got a home win against Jacksonville earlier tonight.
Yeah, but I think Rocco, the team that's unfortunately not NCAA eligible, team you were at earlier this year, picked up a real nice win over Gardner Webb tonight. That's this Queens team. I'm liking this team a lot.
Yeah, they're fun. They're well coached. They play a fun style, and they can also change paces as well. So they don't have to play that full speed blitz. Beating Gardner Webb's a big deal. Like, that's a well coached team. Gardner Webb really showed well in the Atlantic Slam against 3 of our best under the radar teams in Colgate, Yale, and Weber State. So we know they're legit. I think Queens, you can bank on being a very good home team after being in that building. Man, if I think I tweeted at one point, it feels like a box, and they actually have a really good support.
It is a box.
It gets freaking. It's a box, yeah, and it's loud. And you look at all their results from last year. They did really, really well at home all year. If they didn't win, they lost by like 1 or 2 points. I think they're going to be in every A-Sun game at home, if not win almost all of them. Yeah, they're gonna fight and compete, probably top half of the league. And then last thought on the A-Sun, it goes out to Stetson. Just a miracle win at UCF on Sunday. Going into the last 10 minutes, they were down by 9. And if you pull up the KenPom box score, you can see they've put up 40 points out of their 85 in the last 10 minutes, went 92% from the free throw line down the stretch. And that was just enough to get it done. huge moment for Donnie Jones, who coached at UCF for a number of years, to go back to the place that fired him to win with the Hatters. Shout out to Stetson.
And their next game coming up Sunday at Chicago State. Uh, one of our favorite teams. So this game I'll be watching there. And then they're at Charlotte next Tuesday. So how about that?
We'll see if we can dispatch Norman to Chicago State or not.
Rocco, let me stick with you over in the Big Sky, which is another conference that looks like a two-team story. And instead of being Weber State in Montana, it's Weber State and Portland State so far.
Yeah, but credit to Portland State. I mean, they've made some big noise when opening the year at Air Force and at Santa Barbara, getting two big road wins to get everybody's attention. They played in the Cal Baptist MTE, actually beat Cal Baptist down there. Had a disappointing loss to St. Thomas, but last night, Tuesday night, they beat their crosstown rivals in the Rose City battle.
Incredible ending to that game too.
Yeah, incredible ending. A dribble drive finish with 2 seconds to go to win 75-74. They're doing a lot of things well. They're playing pressure defense. I think they're 12th in the country right now in steal rate. They're turning teams over quite a bit, and they're also protecting the ball well. And so, and Jace Coburn, if you're not familiar with the head coach, man, that guy is a ball of energy, super entertaining. If you're not even into the Portland State team, just turn on the game to watch him. His antics on the sidelines are amazing.
And I put an asterisk by the one loss, even Rocco. That was the St. Thomas loss. That was their third game in 3 days, also, which you're not going to do. Probably the only other time you may do that is during a conference tournament this year. So,
yeah, it was also St. Thomas's third game in 3 days, but
but I still think that's a tough ask for any.
It is tough. Those formats are tough.
Yeah, but God, that was a fun.
You're gonna have a bad game out of the 3 days. I agree with that.
Upcoming schedule here, real quick. Portland State, we see them there. They're at Wazoo next, actually, on Saturday. There's a game to circle as well. That might be winnable for them.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, this Portland State team's played well.
A huge one coming up Tuesday. We'll get to a little later in the show again. Weber State at Utah Valley. That is a Beehive conference game. We love the Beehive Conference.
Well, I think we also have to shout out to Tim Miles making his debut in the top range at Montana on Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay. Griggs, Big South Conference.
Big South.
Longwood now 6-1 with wins this week.
And here's Longwood again at the front of the standings, and what a run they've had over the last couple of years after being centenary or near centenary. I still think this Asheville team, once they sort of get into the conference play, is going to be the team to beat. 4-3 isn't bad. I was expecting a little more out of them, but the loss to Michigan and the loss to UNC Wilmington, both really good teams. So I'm still on their bandwagon more than anyone else, but Presby has come down to earth a little bit too after some really big wins early. But yeah, look at Longwood back, having another big year, better than expected, I think.
Yeah, well, Asheville was in an MT over the weekend. I forget where they played these games, but they did lose the game to Lipscomb, but they bounced back with was it Montreal? Okay, they bounced back.
The Northern Classic.
Yeah, they bounced back with the win over Wofford and the win over Western Kentucky. There, so back to back.
Good sign.
Asheville, yeah, back to back wins there over some teams that are decent by under the radar standards. So I am liking Asheville going forward here a little bit. And upcoming schedule here in the Big South. If we want to look at that Asheville team, they are at Kennesaw on Tuesday. I think it's the only game I see for them in the next week here. But Salika, let me jump over to you here in the Big West Conference.
Well, we're looking at UC Irvine. That was probably going to be one of the teams to watch. They get a win against Rice on Friday night, and unfortunately tonight they go on the road to Duquesne. Aren't quite able to pull off the win against the Duke, so that'll be their second D1 loss for the season.
That was a good game. Like, they were down for much of that, but they fought their way back into it, and I think it came down to the final minute. They were right in there, but yeah, to your point, they weren't quite able to get it done. I still love this Eaters team.
Hawaii, the other team that I want to mention here, just by the fact that they're undefeated, really still haven't played anybody. Maybe that San Diego win is somewhat decent.
No.
Tomorrow night we'll really learn about this Hawaii team. They're at Utah. So if there is anything there for this undefeated Warriors team tomorrow night, circle that game. Um, Rocco, any other thoughts on this conference?
I love this conference. I think,
Mhm.
I
I do
think,
too.
yeah, I mean, I was at the Irvine opener and, I got a chance to see Cal State Bakersfield last week, actually, in a big rally. They went on a 14-0 run to beat Sac State in the first MTE game, but then got punked by Tarleton in the championship game. But Bakersfield's a tough, hard-nosed Rod Barnes classic team. I think overall the league, I think the one thing nobody says about the league that has really sunk in for me here at the start of the year is just how hardcore, no holds barred, gloves off this league actually is. You look at the head coaches in this league, you got Don Monson, you got Russell Turner, you've got Joe Pasternak, you've got Rod Barnes. I mean, these guys want war with each other. I think everybody just sees the Big West, they see the waves, they see the fun logos, the fun mascots, and they think it's just all fun and games. This is a hardcore league, and these guys are nasty on the court to each other.
When one of your top rivals is called the Black and Blue game, I
Yeah.
think that says a lot.
Yes, and it's going to be crazy this year because all these teams can fight each other, and they have that style. I'm really looking forward to conference play.
I do want to say goodbye to UC San Diego, who started out 4-0 and is already down to 4-3 after that. Had a
Well, they
little bit
finally
of a
had to
rough
leave.
week.
They had to leave La Jolla, and it was not easy.
Uh, Irvine heading back west. They're at Utah State on Saturday in the upcoming schedule there. I think that's their main game up in here in the next week. And we already mentioned Hawaii having to go to Utah. But let's try to keep things rolling here, Griggs, right over to the Coastal Athletic Association.
Yeah.
And let's start things off with giving a shout out here to the Delaware Fighting Blue Hens, who actually they'll be here again next year, but they have accepted a bid to go join Conference USA. Even though Coastal, the or the Colonial as it was, had a rule at one point in time that says if you're leaving the conference, you're not eligible for the conference tournaments. That rule is gone now, so Delaware will be
Yeah.
able to compete.
That sounds like a
Right.
Tom Yeager
Dollar
rule,
bid.
if you ask me.
Yeah. Probably going.
Once they got rid of James Madison, they got rid of that rule also. They just didn't like the Duke, so that's all
Yeah, I
it was.
guess not. I think that's more for football purposes than basketball.
Well, obviously
I
they're
wouldn't
going to go.
say
They're going to go
CUSA.
FBS. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say basketball wise CUSA. It might be better, but it's not substantially better. And you kind of hate to see another Colonial like team leave. There isn't much or Coastal team leave. Former Colonial. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, Delaware on their way to CUSA. As far as teams that are really jumping out, Delaware having a good year, but what about? I'm still mostly sold on Wilmington right at the top there.
Mostly sold on Wilmington. Do have the App State loss. Won the game at Asheville. One at Gulf
Yeah.
Coast. Gulf Coast picked up a win over FIU tonight, I believe, out on the road. So Gulf Coast has a little bit of life, and beat Murray as well. And Murray just picked up a win tonight. So those wins are going to start looking a little better as we go through the season, at least.
Yep.
Rocco,
so.
any other thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Charleston's got they're trying to clean up some really poor shooting that they started the year off. I saw them a couple times in Myrtle Beach where they really struggled. Salvaged a win at the end of that against Coastal, counts as a road win. I think they're really just trying to sort out, their rotation and they're still running a lot of good stuff. They're just not getting any shots to fall. That's a problem. They have a huge weekend ahead. They actually get Liberty on Friday, which will be a back-to-back for Liberty. They play FAU on Thursday. So it's an actual real opportunity there for Charleston to play Liberty on Boca Raton with the advantage of having the rest. Liberty coming off of a really tough game against FAU. And
Where are they playing those games?
In Boca Raton at
Raton,
FAU
okay.
this year.
Okay.
Next year it will be in Charleston, and the third year it will be at Liberty. It's a 3-year series and really excellent. We'd love to put more of those together for under the radar as the years go on. But the nice thing, I think Charleston got a great draw because they get Liberty on the back-to-back and they'll be fresh. And then they get FAU, I believe, Sunday, which is another off day. I'm sorry, they play them Saturday. Okay. So they'll have their big test Saturday, but if they lose to FAU, no harm done. FAU is a ranked, amazing team. really good chance for Charleston to beat Liberty and springboard their season.
And also, you see here, and I'll highlight it. Right now, it says Drexel versus Penn, St. Joe's, or Villanova. Drexel on Saturday will be playing Villanova in the last place game of the Philly Big Five Classic. So I want to throw that out there just because, as we mentioned, if you're not, it's not very good if you're being mentioned under the radar and you're a team like Villanova.
It's amazing. Yeah, and a
Villanova.
quick thought there. Drexel and I worked together in the offseason on the schedule, and they were really excited about their chances of going 2-0 with the opportunity to play Villanova. So
Well,
it's
they
really,
got to play. Yeah.
yeah, it's really incredible that they're playing them at 0-2.
They got what they wanted, not the way they
They
wanted,
did.
but they got what
That
they
was the
wanted.
goal. They achieved the goal.
And if
Well,
you
they-
subscribe to Peacock, you can also see all 3 games of the Big Five on Saturday starting at 2 p.m.
Or if you live in the Philadelphia area, we'll be on local Philadelphia NBC Sports Net as well. Drexel at Princeton on Tuesday also. So Drexel after that game has a real tough game against Princeton team we're going to be talking about just a few moments here. But Rocco, Conference USA and this Liberty team, we just mentioned them a little bit with the games against Charleston and FAU coming up. But how about this team?
They're awesome. I mean, they really, really impressive. In Myrtle Beach was their main competition, but they also demolition derby Charlotte in their backyard at the NBA arena at the start of the year. So they've got about 4 different pieces of evidence. Nobody's come within double digits of them or within single digits of them. All wins by double digits. And I think the really neat thing about this team is that they're super comfortable in the tight moments. I don't want to compare them to FAU last year. I think FAU is their own unique beast. But from a mental side of the game, there's no panic in this team. They're extremely calm and confident, and they never beat themselves. They don't make mistakes. So I'm really curious to see how this goes down in Boca.
Yeah, that's a great game tomorrow.
Yeah, and they've got to be ready for Charleston on the back-to-back because Charleston's just good enough to be dangerous in that back-to-back scenario. But if anybody can handle it, I would not even be shocked if the Flames go down there and win both.
In which case we will not be discussing. I don't think we'll be discussing the Flames on the show
No,
next
they'll be
week because
right.
I think they'll be in the top 25 at
Yeah.
that point.
And they'll have earned it for sure if they can do that.
Yeah. Also,
don't
a
forget
game against Alabama coming up later.
Well, and a game against Grand Canyon. Don't overlook that one. So.
Yeah. Now, is that
Yeah,
on
that's a big
campus or is that
Yes, it
somewhere?
is.
It is. Okay.
It's part of the WAC CUSA Alliance, so they do have to play a true road game at Utah Valley
Okay.
as part of that too.
Yeah, those are the 2 games there: Grand Canyon home at Utah Valley.
Yep.
Let's jump back over here. As far as the rest of the conference goes, I know Louisiana Tech is out to a 5-1 start. It's only 3-1 against D1. The McNeese win is solid, but they need to do a little more, and they're going to get a shot later tonight. In fact, at New Mexico. Let's see if that game is. If we got any type of score update on that game here, in fact,
That McNeese win looks a lot better right now than it did 2 days ago.
Yeah, it certainly does. And
Yeah, and I think the big story there, Chad.
by the way, they're down 15 late at New Mexico, so that shows as we record this. So that shows where
Okay.
Louisiana Tech really is, I think. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think going to the pit's a tough place. I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't get to see much before we joined, but not sure if Jalen House came back in New Mexico's case. But the big news for Louisiana Tech is they did get the waiver reversed for Daniel Bacho. And I think it really brings a different element to this roster. They came out undefeated before tonight with him. So I think going forward, they're a legitimate, I think probably number 2 in Conference USA to threaten Liberty. I like what UTEP's done. I think the injury to Cam Weston on Middle Tennessee sets Middle Tennessee down to the 4-5 range, unfortunately for the Blue Raiders. So I do look at Louisiana Tech as probably the primary threat to Liberty in this league.
Here's the upcoming schedules on the screen. We've mentioned the big games for Liberty this week, and Louisiana Tech after their game tonight, their next game is at Stephen F. Austin. Looks like on Tuesday. While Liberty on the same night will be hosting Mississippi Valley, which they better win. That's all I gotta say. Stalika, how about the Horizon League here, which has another conference that has started conference play with among other teams, Fort Wayne picking up a win tonight over Green Bay and Oakland with a road win at Detroit Mercy after what they did Monday night to your.
Yeah, I would like to congratulate Detroit Mercy for at least getting to a higher lead against Oakland than the Musketeers were able to achieve just by virtue of getting a 4-point lead early in that game. Now, Fort Wayne is looking like the part of a team that, even though they survived against Green Bay, probably going to be in serious contention all year long. But Wright State and NKU are still going to be the usual suspects as far as who should ultimately win the league.
Yeah, a really good story in Fort Wayne. Never really been to an NCAA tournament. Never really been a conference front runner either in the Horizon or in the Summit League before that. So, and I know that that's not a lot of heavy lifting that they've done, but they did win at DePaul. The fact that they're winning games at all is kind of impressive. This is another team that I think Rocco back in July was big on.
Yes,
And
I
it's
love this
interesting.
team.
It's interesting because we talked about these early conference games, and here it is. You could see maybe one of the biggest games of the Horizon League Conference season based on what we've seen so far is coming up this weekend with Fort Wayne at Oakland.
Yeah, and you don't want that wasted on you want the students at a game like that.
Right. I mean, they'll play again in February
True.
at
Yeah.
Fort Wayne, but
Yeah,
interesting.
the idea is to not play conference games during the break, during the student break. There is no break there is no basketball break.
Yeah, and if those two teams keep playing like this, I might find myself in Fort Wayne in February.
Right.
There we go. Rocco Miller will be February 14th. He will be spending his Valentine's Day
In
in Fort
baby.
Wayne,
In
Michigan.
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Where would you rather be? Where would you rather be?
All right. There's the rest of the upcoming schedule. We get back into non-conference play after this weekend. Fort Wayne will be at Southern Indiana. Oakland will be hosting Toledo in a very interesting game coming up next Wednesday. So I might circle that one as well. Griggs, the Ivy League. We mentioned Princeton a little bit, and how about if we're going by that RPI? This is the number 4 team in the nation now. I think we snuck like Purdue in there or something at number 2, but they don't really count.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Princeton is quite 4th, but they're perhaps 24th. This Princeton team is awesome. Let's pull up their profile and just sort of delve into it a little bit. The neutral floor win against Rutgers, the win at Duquesne, Duquesne's only home loss, I believe, and they've, Hofstra really good at home, Monmouth decent at home. And that's just it. It's not like they've just been winning home bye games like some of the P5s with the bloated records have done. They've gone out and played. And while they haven't played, again, protected seeds or ranked teams, these are still games that are reasonably hard to win. And I just really like this Princeton team. Suddenly the game against St. Joe's looking really good. When you look at what Joe's has done recently, game at Delaware, another really good road game.
St. Joe's will be playing Temple for the Big 5 championship, and Villanova will not be in.
Right. The 2 non-D1 games that they scheduled were added late. We've since learned that they had 2 D1 teams on the schedule that backed out of it. It was going to be part of an MTE. So I hope that there's at least some understanding as to why that is. But the other thing about the Ivy League, if we go back and look at the standings as a whole, is it's performing very well. It's arguably outperforming or performing as well as maybe some of the bottom leagues that aren't under the radar leagues. You've got Harvard, while they went to Indiana and lost, and that was a missed opportunity, still playing well. Cornell 5-1. Yale, who we thought would be the class of the league, is maybe a little disappointing, but only a little. If you look at their 3 losses, one was to Gonzaga, and they've certainly played in games that were really hard to win. They kind of blew that Rhodey game. They had a double-digit lead in the second half and blew it. And then Weber State, who also a good under-the-radar team, lost that one in overtime. You would have liked to have seen them get either the Rhodey or the Weber game, if not both. But they're still doing good enough to where I think the Ivy is in really healthy shape, and I think there's room at the top of it to get it a team inside the bubble. Rocco,
I was going to say I still really love the Yale upcoming scheduled non-conference. First of all, at Vermont, but later on they still got.
I love that you have Yale up there twice, man. You must.
That's how much we're really paying attention to Yale right now.
Yeah.
They got at Kansas, at Santa Clara, and at Howard, both tough places to win as well. Sorry, Rocco. He went over to you. He was throwing it over to you though.
Well, I think Princeton's the key to the at-large puzzle, and with what they have remaining, It's starting to look pretty doable. I mean, they've already won 4 true road games, including tonight. Sorry, 5 now.
5 now.
And
Five.
yeah, 5 now, including new, and then you add on a neutral Rutgers win. I think maybe the issue from a pure resume standpoint is if Rutgers is not a tournament team, if Duquesne's not a tournament team, then it might be a little bit tougher path. But if those teams play into tournament caliber, it's going to start looking even better, and they'll have some margin for error. But going forward, you got home games with Furman and Drexel next week. They'll be favored in both. Furman's a little banged up still, and then a roadie at St. Joe's could be tricky. But again, if Princeton's playing at this level, I think they find a way there. And then, of course, that Delaware game you guys talked about. So after that, it's all league play. And if you win 29, if they go 29-2, 28-3, even slip up a couple times in Ivy, I still think they get in.
I think they're already starting to gather votes, and if they go 29-2, they're going to be ranked in the teens. Maybe
they'll be like
yeah.
they'll be like a Murray State type,
Yeah,
Buffalo type of years past. Yeah,
and if you recall, that Murray State team was on the 7 line. I mean, they weren't just in; they were in on the first ballot.
Yeah, same with Wofford.
Yeah,
before them. Yeah, exactly. I think they're trending that way right now. See how December, again, a key month because you're going to add into that non-conference mix of games, but they're not as challenging as November. So just stay healthy, keep playing well, and the Ivy League itself, like you guys said, Penn's dangerous. Yale is obviously pretty dang good. Cornell is really good, and Harvard is very dangerous. So, they might be able to get in at like 27, 26 wins even, as long as those are on the road, competitive, it doesn't ruin their numbers, all that good stuff.
Here's the upcoming schedule in the Ivy League. Quite a few games to look forward to here. We mentioned Yale at Vermont, Furman at Princeton. Penn will be taking on, I believe they'll be taking on LaSalle there in the third place game at the Big Five on Saturday. So that could be updated for that. And
that's crazy.
Keep an eye on the Ocean State. Bryant at Brown on Friday. Brown at Rhode Island next Wednesday. We love the Ocean State games.
Yes, we do.
And also next Wednesday, New Hampshire at Dartmouth. Throw a little Granite State rivalry in there.
Yeah, I love the Granite State rivalry.
Well, New Hampshire cannot look past Columbia though, because the Lions. This is a team that usually doesn't win more than 6 games a year, and they've already, even though only 4 of those are against D1 competition, they usually don't get to 6 this early in the year.
One more game.
Columbia won at Temple, who is in the Big Five championship game.
Yep.
And they beat them at Temple, so Columbia's good.
Columbia throw and keep an eye Tuesday. One more game to keep an eye on. Tuesday night, Cornell at Syracuse. This is a winnable game for Cornell.
Kind of it, yeah.
I mean, Cornell's good. I actually kind of like Syracuse right now, but I'm still not disagreeing with you.
Rocco, how about the Metro Atlantic, where I don't know that we quite have as much to talk about. Other than I guess we got a conference game in tonight. Marist won at Iona.
Big upset there to start league play. Really interesting start to the Tobin Anderson era in the Metro Atlantic, but it kind of reminds me of a bunch of other years we've seen where John Dunn's done well against Iona. He was in Rick Pitino's thorn in Rick Pitino's side for those first couple of years. Pitino was there, continues it here against Tobin. Marist playing some young guys mixed with old guys, a really interesting bunch. I'm really liking this Canisius team personally. I think they beat St. Bonaventure, which they do even when they're bad because it's such a big rivalry. But I think they're legitimately good. Like they beat Western Kentucky up in Canada, had a tight loss to Bowling Green, who shot the ball well. I think they're really playing a strong non-conference here. It's going to set them up well for Metro Atlantic action, opening up with a really also somewhat overachieving Quinnipiac team on Friday.
Also throwing a win against Wofford, and Canisius ended up 2-1 in that Northern Classic MTE.
Yep. They are hosting Quinnipiac and then hosting St. Peter's this weekend with these early conference games before they step out of conference host Robert Morris next week. Other game to circle, I guess. There's another Western New York Big Four game coming up next Wednesday. The Bonnies at Niagara. So Uh,
Throw the record out the window in the Big Four.
Yeah.
let's
Western New York.
let's keep things rolling right on along here. Salika, the Mid American Conference. This is your neck of the woods.
Well, we were looking at a team like Northern Illinois, who had surprisingly got out to a pretty good 4-1 record going into the week. They got the win at DePaul, which was kind of expected, but they did fall back to earth a little bit by a 22-point loss against Northwestern, but nothing to be terribly disappointed at. Akron and Kent State are wagon wheel rivals. They haven't been able to get the ball rolling. So you look at a team like Ball State. Okay, they go 1-1 with a win against Pine Bluff, but end up getting blown out by the Little Rockos. So not sure how good that's going to look for them.
Yeah.
Um,
I think all in all, I think I've been pretty disappointed in the MAC so
I
far.
have
think I was
too. That
expecting more out
yeah.
of this conference this year. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Griggs.
I was expecting more out of the conference and more out of Akron in particular, but just in general, it's. I will say this: I didn't. I think I coming into the year, had you said what is the over under on the total number of games the three directional Michigan schools would win, I would have said 10, and I would have probably taken the under. Well, they've already won 10, so they've overachieved. The other 9 teams have kind of disappointed. Akron, because I really, when they went to South Dakota State, especially, and won on opening night, I was like, oh my God, the Zips are good. And since then, they're just 3-3.
Yeah, I think the only team that has surprised a little bit is this Northern Illinois team. I don't think we were expecting much out of them this season, and they, I mean, they won at DePaul, which again is a Big East team. So if
Sort
nothing
of.
else. um,
Yeah.
go
Well,
ahead,
based
Rocco.
on where Northern Illinois has been versus now, it's a
Yeah,
big growth year for them. Exciting, and I think that with the top of the MAC showing some vulnerability, it kind of opens up a potential, opportunity for a Northern Illinois to maybe take the bid later in the year. And that's really exciting about the league tournament coming up. I also think, Akron. I'm not off the wagon there at all. Their losses are to Utah State, Drake on a neutral court in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and a loss at UNLV by 2 last night. So
Should have, yeah.
yeah, I mean those are not bad losses at all. So if I think Akron still has everything in front of them and a chance to play Bradley next Tuesday, who's obviously a quality team.
Yeah.
that game. Also, Indiana State at Northern Illinois on Tuesday as well. It's pair of games to really circle. And we keep throwing out to the Western New York here. We got the Bonnies at Buffalo on Saturday. So all these teams are playing their round robin over this next week. These Western
Yeah,
New
when it
York
comes to
teams.
Buffalo, the record does actually matter for the Big Four.
Yeah.
They're just so bad right now. It's really, really rough time for them.
Yeah. Um, let me let's go over to Griggs, let me go over to you for the MIAC here, and I we at least give a real quick look at it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little mention of Howard with what they did with their
Well,
double overtime win, and then the real game effort they gave against Cincinnati.
yeah, I think Howard, I'm starting to like them more than anyone else. When you look at the records, especially the D1 records, you have to keep in mind that a lot of these teams are playing road bye games, which are really hard to win. Norfolk, a traditional front runner, but I think Howard is the team that I'm kind of most on board with. They had Cincinnati in their building and took them to overtime. Actually, hit a 3 at the end of regulation, which if you were watching on TV, you probably missed because the camera was focusing on the other end of the court for some reason. But the commentary was great. But all in all,
and that was
yeah.
Seth Towns hitting that 3, and this as he gets more and more work to this team, I think Seth Towns is going to be huge for this Howard team going through this
Yeah,
season.
and
Yeah.
Go ahead,
you know,
Rocco,
yeah.
or Griggs, or whoever.
Well, just to
No,
wrap up
go
what I
ahead.
was saying, Howard, I think it's Howard and company with maybe Norfolk being in the mix.
I was watching Towns last night too, Chad, and he's playing with that giant brace on his knee, and it just makes me nervous. Like, I mean, it's clear how big of a difference he makes at that level. Like
Right.
when he's on and he's playing full speed. I mean, he's clearly still, even at his old age, a power. He's a power 6 level guy. Really hard to find that in a league like the MIAC, and I think they already had a good team without him. So knock on wood. I hope Towns gets through the whole season, and hopefully his leg improves. I just got a little nervous watching him try to cut against a team like Cincinnati last night. But you know, he had an incredible game, carried the team, and if he stays on the court, it's a really good team.
Well, the team's got the entire week off this week, so hopefully he can
I hope.
keep
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
heal up after that game.
Yep.
You just see the rest of the games there on the screen, but um,
Yep. Good luck to them in their final exams because we ain't going to see them for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
uh, Rocco, how about the Northeast Conference, where I'm not certain what to say here.
The
Off
greatest league on the world.
This league, and because non-conference play, it is not been the greatest league in the world.
No, I mean, I don't know. Fresh off my mind is Central Connecticut blowing out Army this morning, or this
Yeah.
afternoon, I should say. Like that, that was not expected, but a nice win for Rod Sellers and his program and the Blue Devils. Merrimack, I
was
think
gonna,
just lost a heartbreaker to Georgetown. At
yeah,
the
they
buzzer.
yeah, I think I could probably update to
They
get that
did.
score
They
on the
did.
screen.
They
Look at this, the Magic here. No, it did not appear on the screen. Oh well.
Yeah,
So-
they
oh, there it
they
is.
had a chance
It is
to
there.
tie or win at the end, and they
Mm.
couldn't get a basket. So
Yeah, and then
Uh,
I do think there is a real some strength coming out of Sacred Heart throughout the year.
yeah,
Each of their losses were on the road. Iona, UMBC, St. Joe's, you know, better resource programs, of course, and all pretty competitive single-digit losses. They've been taking care of business against the other teams they've played, picked to win the league. All of their metrics look good. Their defense looks really strong. And so I'm excited for Anthony Latina and his team, the Pioneers.
I will give a shout out to Long Island. Did pick up the win over Corpus Christi back on Friday. Long Island was our worst team in D1 last year, so as ranked by
Yeah.
Hoops HD. So hopefully avoid that this year. Upcoming schedule here: Sacred Heart. We see they are going to be hosting BU on Saturday, and then at St. John's on Wednesday. That might be a little bit of a tough order for them.
Yeah.
But Stalika, how about the Ohio Valley Conference, where Moorhead stayed off to a 5-3 start with a couple of nice wins over the past week and a half here.
Yeah, one of the jokes we made last week was usually Moorhead State's either playing a bye game on the road or a non-D1 game at home. So it was actually a little bit refreshing that they got to play at least an old conference foe and Austin P and ended up getting a double-digit win. Now Tennessee State, I think, is going to be another team that's going to bear watching, at least as far as some of the
it went finally after we started tonight, but they did lose in overtime at Alabama A&M,
which
never a
is
good sign.
mind-boggling.
Well,
after
fortunately,
how
that does not count in the OVC standings.
Oh my god. I was really big on them, especially after seeing their West Coast trip to LMU, and then I thought they hung in with Oregon for a while. But a team I'm kind of big on is Little Rock. They had a lot of close losses a year ago. I think it was something ridiculous, 8 losses either in overtime or by fewer than 3 possessions. Maybe it was 10 or 11. I mean, it was crazy, and it looked like more of the same this year. When you look at some of those games, the Georgia State loss in overtime, they were right in there with Northern Illinois. But, a real decisive, impressive win against Ball State, and they beat a pretty good Tulsa team. And I don't think they're going to make a run at the bubble or anything, but when you look, this is an exceptionally weak league that seems to be hovering around the 16 line as its ceiling. The best that I think it's going to do is maybe avoid Dayton. I've been as impressed with Little Rock as I have with anyone else, minus Eastern Illinois. Really great effort against Kansas last night, but as far as stability goes, I kind of like the Little Rockos.
Yeah, and that was real impressive. What Eastern Illinois was right in there with Kansas for.
Yeah.
I thought every time I thought Kansas was turning it on, Eastern Illinois kept coming back, but finally Kansas had enough at the end, and the rest of the upcoming games here in the conference are on the screen there as well. Moorhead will be hosting Chattanooga on Sunday in a fairly interesting game. Home game that is not a non-D1 game for Moorhead. Stalika. There we go.
Yeah, but I think my favorite non-D1 is going to be visiting Western Illinois.
Let's just get out of this conference. Rocco, how about
That's
the
better than Hannibal LaGrange on tomorrow?
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
uh,
I-
Rocco, how about a conference
Loving that
full
Steelers.
of red here, the Patriot League? A lot of losses here in the Patriot League.
oh,
In fact, only what do I see? Two D1 wins there. Colgate over Binghamton and Navy over VMI the last week.
Oh my
If we got
goodness.
anything on it.
oh, you're
Trying
right.
well, a lot of teams played tonight. Lehigh is supposed to be the second best team in the league. Goes down at home to St. Francis of PA, the only St.
And,
Francis
and you know
left.
what? They had this game by 5 with about 15 seconds left
That's
and just
bad.
fell apart. It fell apart. I was watching the end of that game. They fouled a 3-point shooter with about 5 seconds left. It was not a good look for
Oh
Lehigh
my gosh.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only I think Colgate and Navy, a lot of teams played tonight.
Mm.
So here we're recording this on a Wednesday night for everybody watching. Out of the entire league, only Colgate and Navy won.
Yeah.
Boston U, Lehigh, Lafayette, American, Loyola, Maryland, Bucknell, Holy Cross, and Army all lost tonight. So
I think we're moving on to the next league then, aren't we?
Colgate beat Binghamton and Navy beat VMI. I don't know. I don't know. They're supposed to beat those teams.
Colgate is
Yeah.
going to try to extend their win streak on Saturday. They're going to Arizona. What are their chances?
That might be around a 64 preview.
It's
Let's
good they play those games though, because that's the
Yeah.
kind of game they're gonna have to win when they get to the actual tournament.
yeah. I mean, Colgate still should be the overwhelming favorite in this league once we get to conference
Yes.
play, but
They
we'll
are
see what
still
happens when
good.
we get there. Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Griggs, how about the SoCon? Let's talk about a conference that is pretty good here. Very good, in fact, at the top.
Yeah, Western Carolina still without a loss, a huge surprise. I know some people were predicting them to be good, but the wins at Notre Dame, win at Middle Tennessee, all pretty impressive. And their next two are on the road, but they're both winnable. And I think their next 3 or 4 are winnable. I'm really big on them. But it's hard as far as they're a great story, but I think the best team in the league is this Greensboro team.
Yeah, Rocco, this Greensboro team has that win at Arkansas, just the one loss at Vanderbilt. They've also beaten the Illinois Chicago team we've discussed earlier tonight. They've beaten the
Delaware
team we
yeah.
discussed earlier tonight. So they've beaten teams that we've been discussing near the top of their leagues.
Yeah, Greensboro's been really impressive. I think the win at Arkansas, is a big piece of gold for them.
But just to put a note on that, as we record this, Arkansas up 14 on Duke. So
Right. Yeah, and I mean Arkansas is full of pro level talent, whether that's NBA or overseas or whatever. For a Greensboro team to catch them on a bad night and outplay them, really, they had the lead almost the whole game in Bud Walton Arena.
Yeah.
That is the kind of win that can keep you really in the mix for a long time throughout the year. And the Vanderbilt game was close. It's not like they lost it bad. Winning their 3-game MTE helps a lot. Delaware and UIC are off to a great start. So hopefully for Greensboro's sake, those two carry water throughout the year. And then they'll get some more chances. They go on some tricky road games and another big opportunity when they go to Texas at the in between Christmas and New Year's on the 29th. So, and their other tricky road games are Marshall and High Point. Those are games you can't overlook. But I think in general, Greensboro was a team. I really liked the makeup of their roster, a lot of experience. I thought it was the team that was going to be able to knock off Furman in the SoCon tournament. So they were my SoCon tournament pick at the start of the year. But I didn't think they would be this good this early. Really impressed by this group under Mike Jones.
Yeah, they're looking really good here. The team that we've been paying a little bit of attention to a little earlier was this Chattanooga team. They've kind of come back down to earth with not only their loss last week against Evansville, but tonight, just not even bothering showing up at Lipscomb tonight. It was
it was this afternoon. It was really bizarre. Right. I don't know if it was
Education Day. Education Day. Full of kids, and that always annoys the opponents, and clearly the Mocs were annoyed.
It was an under the radar game of the day.
Yeah, I think it annoys the home team too.
There's the upcoming
played
schedule.
well, but this isn't Lipscomb's time. Sorry.
Yeah.
Upcoming schedule. Greensboro is going to be hosting William Peace, so they have a nice peaceful game coming up Friday. Western Carolina at Gardner Webb. That's their next games for each of them.
I think Western Carolina High Point's going to be a pretty entertaining one on Tuesday.
And
Yeah, and that Gardner Webb's tough.
Furman at Arkansas. So who knows what this Arkansas team they
Yeah.
can't beat Greensboro. They can beat Duke. Who knows? Stalika, how about the Southland Conference?
Oh, this continues to be pretty much McNeese and everyone else. McNeese gets a big win at UAB by 21 last night, and not really much else that you can talk about outside of that this week.
And they're almost getting Will Wade back. I think there's one more game, two more games left without Will Wade. Well, one of them will be a non-D1 game, but I think he's back by the Southern Miss game. That would be the 10th game, 10-game suspension. So, I think they've more than held serve without him.
Yeah. I mean, the only losses are at La Tech and at Western Carolina. Nothing to be ashamed of there. They've got great wins at VCU and UAB already. I think this team, it reminds me of a Stephen F. Austin level Southland team of years past. You look at the metrics, they're already in the top 90 in KenPom. This is a high major starting lineup for the most part. A lot of these guys could have gone to the high major programs. And like I said earlier, to somebody on Twitter I don't think there's an easier path to an auto bid than McNeese because the Southland wants them to stay so badly. They get to host the conference. They get to host the conference tournament. I'll go on a limb and say
where are we? There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, with them hosting the conference tournament, I'm pretty confident they'll be a 1 seed there. I mean, these guys have got to be in the NCAA tournament on anybody's forecast.
They got to be, but I mean, there's no shot in that large bid here. They even if they win that Michigan,
the Michigan game,
the Michigan game, but
yeah,
you scheduled
you got those
four
other two big road ones. Yeah.
You missed chances by scheduling biblical studies and Champion Christian and Lit Torno, and I don't even know who MUW is on December 5th.
Oh, come on. That is that is going to be a priceless game.
We know who that is actually.
Who
the
is
Mississippi
Mississippi?
University?
Oh, yes, the Mississippi University of Women.
Thank you.
100%.
I was trying to figure out who MUW was for the last 10 minutes here. That's why I was clicking on the wrong screen and everything. Yeah, that's.
I think if McNeese goes into conference play with wins at VCU, UAB, and Michigan, you can ignore the 4 non-D1s. Sure, it's not a lot of data points, but those losses at La Tech and Western Carolina aren't bad losses, Chad. I think they're in the at-large mix if they win at Michigan and they win all these other. I mean, beating Southern Miss and Louisiana isn't like nothing. So, we'll see. It's always fun to think about that.
Well, their biggest competition in the Southland Conference tournament might end up being Texas A&M Commerce, who did win at St. Joe's earlier this year. And, St. Joe's is going to be playing for the Big 5 title, not Villanova.
Corpus Christi is 2 seconds away from winning at UTEP, or 2.7 seconds as we record this. So. Yeah.
That'd be a big win for Jim Shaw. I mean, Jim Shaw is one of the hardest workers in the business, and finally getting a chance to be a head coach this year. So that'd be cool to see.
We've got the SWAC here, Griggs, and it is the SWAC, and I guess a shout out Jackson State with another road win. This time at Arkansas State, after they won at Missouri also this year.
Yeah, I'm starting to like this Jackson State team. Just based on those 2 wins. Prairie View 3-3 overall, and again, similar to the MEAC and the Northeast and some of the leagues like that, the D1 records reflect a lot of road bye games. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 12 teams without a D1 win of any kind yet, and then another 1, 2, 3 with just 1, 4 with just 1. So 8 of the 12 teams have 1 win or fewer after we've played more than half of a football season.
Yeah, and you throw in there Florida A&M losing a home game to a non-D1 team tonight in double overtime, Albany State of Georgia. I will give a little shout out here to Mississippi Valley. They lost in overtime on Sunday at Pacific, came very close to winning that game. Did a little research. It has been since, I believe, 06 or 07 since Mississippi Valley won a true road game against a non-conference foe in D1. So very close. Maybe this Mississippi Valley team will actually qualify for the top 8 and make the SWAC tournament this year. That might be a long shot. So, upcoming schedule here in the SWAC.
Corpus Christi has 1.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mississippi University of Women with another game here at Alabama State on Sunday. So they are playing two D1 games this year. What else we got? That's the rest of the game. Pine Bluff at Gonzaga. They might be above their heads a little bit on that one, just a bit. And let's see here. If we get a score on Pine Bluff, Oklahoma was supposed to be going on. Oh, that's tomorrow night. Rocco, how about the Summit League?
Yeah, Summit League. We could talk about North Dakota maybe. I think
I think
their
it's the first time
record-
we've mentioned them all season, so let's talk
I
about them.
think it's the first time we've mentioned them ever.
Well, I think one thing about them is they're 4-1 against D1 so far, so it's hard to tell. They hosted a MTE where they beat New Orleans and Eastern Michigan barely, but I do think they had some pieces coming back this year that those wins, even though they look like weak wins, narrow wins, they'll do something later. I think it'll help build some confidence. They're getting great play from a guy named Trayson Eaglestaff. He won the Summit League Player of the Week, playing very, very well. I think he's leading the conference in scoring. So just because we don't get to talk about the Fighting Hawks very often, this was a good time to do it. We'll see what they're made of. They're going to finally get out of the Dakotas for a little bit, go play Fullerton and Riverside this weekend, and then come back and host Portland a week from Saturday. So they'll get some good competition, a little bit better competition than they've had. But for now, they're somebody to talk about.
Yeah, I still think at the end of the day, South Dakota State will probably be able to bounce back and be in there. Oral Roberts has shown a little more life so far this season than I expected out of them, quite honestly, as well. So
You think overall, I'm kind of disappointed
I mean,
in the league.
they took K-State to overtime last night.
They did. That was an impressive showing. But Oral Roberts normally shows out just a 1-4 start. South Dakota State 1-4, a D1 1-4. This league is this league isn't the top under the radar league, but it's normally better than this.
Yeah, here's the rest of the upcoming schedule here on the screen. Tuesday, Kansas City at Kansas. Is there a name for that rivalry?
Yeah. The
Turnpike rivalry.
Yeah, the
Turnpike.
turn. Yeah.
Salika, how about the Sun Belt Conference? Now, James Madison not technically under the radar. We discussed them on Monday night, but the rest of the league, is there anything to even really discuss so far? I think
Well,
we
we
expect a
finally
lot
ha-
more out of this league.
Well, we
beyond
finally
James
have a
right here.
hot team that's actually fighting at their weight class for a change. So they're beating Austin P and also East Tennessee State. So at least they're now 4-2 against actual D1 competition this year.
Here's someone who hasn't played well, and it makes no sense. What the hell is wrong with Southern Miss?
Well, before the season started, right before, wasn't very well publicized, but Neftali Alvarez underwent torn ACL surgery, so he's out for the year. That hasn't played at second. Really counted on him. Andrew Crowley, great scorer, but I think Southern Miss went from like a 2-weapon team with a lot of good supporting cast to a one-man show, and it's been pretty predictable for teams to prep for them.
Mm-hmm.
The upcoming schedule, again, outside of James Madison's games, I don't really know that there's anything that I'm super circling in this league.
Well, you got to circle the Keystone Cops visiting James Madison on Sunday.
Yeah, the Appalachian State Auburn game could be fun.
Actually, yeah, hosting Auburn.
Appalachian State gets to host them in a rare opportunity, and man, they could not be playing better basketball right now either. So that's really going to be awesome.
Yeah, Auburn is ridiculously good.
They are, but that could
Yeah.
be a hostile environment. Things get weird. Just ask Duke tonight when you go to a hostile environment.
Yeah.
Also, maybe this Duquesne at Marshall game next Wednesday. It's still a week away, but might be one to keep a half an eye on there at least. We have to Griggs finish things out here for our normal conferences with the WAC, where I think we got to talk a little bit about the Lopes. Maybe a couple teams we got to talk about with California Baptist only with one loss. Tarleton picked up a early conference win tonight at Stephen F. Austin as well. But let's start with Grand Canyon.
Yeah, let's go ahead and pull them up. A 5-1 start, and again, not a huge amount of weight that they've been lifting, but they do have that the neutral floor win against San Francisco. We're going to learn a lot about them coming up. They have that loss against South Carolina, but I was really impressed with how they played in that game, and I think South Carolina is one of those teams that is better than what most people realize, and as the season goes on, we'll realize how good they are. But you know, they had UT Arlington, as you mentioned, but after that, San Diego State at home. What a great opportunity. Showcase. Has any, I know Louisville's gone there. Rocco might have a better memory of this. Well, in Stalika, because you're more of a historian than I am. Is this the biggest team, other than maybe that Louisville team that went there when they were transitioning up to play at Grand Canyon? This is just an amazing home game for them.
Yeah, I think that would qualify. I mean, San Diego State
Yeah.
was in the national championship game last year.
Yeah.
Arizona State, I think, went there just
Oh, did
recently.
they? Okay. Yeah. I didn't think. Yeah.
Once. That was a big deal. They've had a few, but I think this is probably number two to Louisville based on the circumstance.
Yeah, and then they go to Liberty. So we're going to learn the opportunities for the Lopes are there, and the question is, are they good enough to get the high caliber wins and get that opportunity to make a run at the bubble? Kyle Baptist off of transition, a really good story. You like to see them have a good record, but
Haven't played anybody yet.
you haven't played anybody.
Well, they've got a trip to Oregon
Road
coming
win.
up here pretty soon, so
Yeah.
still a week away.
Yeah,
but-
a nice 25-point road win for the Lancers tonight against Southern Utah. Usually a tough place to go. Obviously, Southern Utah's brand new with the whole roster and the coach, but still
Yeah.
not easy to do that on the road. So that's a good sign for the Lancers.
Two
this
other
is-
teams that I like from this league that are sort of buried in the standings, but that I think will do good once league play starts. I like the Seattle U team and SFA. Really good.
Seattle losing to Utah Valley tonight. SFA losing at home to Tarleton tonight. So
Which
not good conference starts for
oof.
either one of those teams.
Yeah.
Is
Well, on a serious note, that was also an emotional win for Tarleton because head coach Billy Gillespie is now going to be on a medical leave indefinitely. So I'm not sure what the issue would be right there.
he hasn't been
Yeah,
with the
and-
team
and
for
Gillespie-
he wasn't with the team over the weekend either for the last few games. So
Yeah, and I covered Tarleton's win against Austin P in SoCal, and I'm one guy that has I think not only all WAC potential, but I think if they win enough games, he could be the player of the year. Ja'Cory Smith. I mean, the guy is phenomenally talented. He torched Austin P that night. I'm sure he had a good game tonight. I mean, he's a joy. He's a joy to watch, and their interim coach Jones. He's 3-0 now. Best wishes to Coach Gillespie. We never want to see that for anybody. But I think given the circumstances, they've really rallied to win their MTE, now win on the road to open WAC play. That's a Stephen F. Austin team that blew out Drake.
Yeah, they did. Blew
Just
them
last
out.
week.
Yeah.
So that's a veteran Stephen F. Austin team. I think this Tarleton team is very dangerous and somebody to keep your eye on.
also keep Utah Valley coming off of their win tonight over Seattle. They've got a game at Utah Tech on Saturday. Then they're hosting Weber, which are not only interesting games, but they're also, especially the Utah Valley team, as I think they're also all Beehive games. So we love the Beehive Conference.
Yeah. We love the BI.
One last team, real quick. Chicago State, an 0-2 week. They really fell apart against Loyola Chicago last night.
Yeah, they did. Had a lead, blew it.
Their upcoming games, they'll be hosting Delaware State and Stetson this week. But we mentioned the Beehive Conference. Why don't we take a quick look at the Beehive standings? No, let's not. Let's try it again.
Oh.
Here's our Beehive standings. As we see, we did not actually get any conference games in yet. So Utah State's still 1-0, leading the way. Southern Utah is a team they beat. But as we just mentioned, we have 3 huge Beehive games coming up this week. Utah Valley at Utah Tech. We were at Utah Valley, and Southern Utah at Utah.
Oh God! I wish Utah State, Utah State, BYU, and Utah all need to play.
Well, whoever does win this conference, they do get one of these.
Yeah, the old bring back the bucket.
Well, with
Somebody,
2 wins, Utah Valley could be the favorite to win their first ever bucket.
yeah,
There we go. Bring back the bucket, the old bucket.
yeah,
A couple other conferences we've got to check in on. How about the Front Range Conference? Huge
yeah.
game tonight. Colorado State now 2-0 and in a commanding lead with their win over Colorado tonight. R- Looking to run away with the Front Range this year.
Yeah, and I think are they playing all the opponents? Because they get Wyoming in conference and
They'll
Air
have
Force.
they'll have Denver coming up next week.
Yeah, so Colorado State playing the full Front Range schedule. They used to all play each other.
And they're also
Yeah.
playing Colorado College as well.
Yep.
I'll be covering the Colorado State Washington game on Saturday in Vegas, and so looking forward to catching up with Nico Medved about his thoughts on the Front Range chase. So
Yeah.
I'll get
Yeah,
back to you
good.
guys with some
Yeah,
some
all
quotes
right,
from Nico.
Yeah.
How about going even a little more mythical than the Front Range? How about the Back Range Conference and the Lopes now 2-0?
At least the Front Range was once a real mythical conference.
This was never a real mythical conference, but the Lopes are running away with the Back Range right now at 2-0. Let's see if they get any conference games this week. Oh no, we have a huge one coming up Saturday. Actually, we have the New Mexico State New Mexico game. We know,
Yeah.
No
if you
fights
did-
allowed.
yeah, there was
Oh,
an ugly story last year with this.
Yeah, it'll be. I was kind of curious if they would resume it right away. I guess I'm glad that they did. I don't think has this finally cooled this rivalry off a little bit, because outside of BYU Utah, weren't you just sort of shocked even before what happened last year at how hot this rivalry was getting? Oh my
Well, it
God.
must have been hot because the
Yeah.
New Mexico State bus was going like 120 miles an hour back to campus until he got pulled over.
Yeah.
Let's go mythical again. How about the Top Range Conference? Washington State beats Eastern Washington. They are now running away with it. And again, we've mentioned this before. Gonzaga cannot win the conference because they chose not to schedule any games this year.
Very disappointing. Rocco, are we going to get you to any Gonzaga games this year? And you just ask them why they're neglecting the
Yes.
top mark few. Yeah, why aren't you
I
playing any?
will
Top Range games.
good timing on that question. I will also be at their game Saturday against USC. It's a doubleheader with the Front Range Colorado State versus Washington game.
Yeah.
So I will catch up with Mark Few and get his thoughts on why they didn't schedule any Top Range games this year.
Yes. All right. Yeah.
Here's our Hoops HD Under the Radar top 10 list. We all voted the top 10 teams, a few honorable mentions as well. Honorable mentions, teams that did not quite make the top 10. McNeese, Wilmington, Lowell, Vermont, Weber State, Chattanooga, Colgate, Yale, Evansville. None of those teams made our top 10.
Yeah.
Making the top 10, though, at number 10 is Portland State out of the Big Sky.
We talked about them earlier.
Wow.
A great story, off to a great start, and then beating their rival last night.
Two-way tie for 8th between Irvine, despite the loss tonight, and the Lopes in there as well. Two
Yeah.
teams moving in opposite directions on this list, I think.
Yeah. The Eaters probably would have been higher had it not been for the loss.
Indiana State coming in at
Ooh,
number
the
7.
Trees. Wow.
I
Way
think
up
that's
there.
their debut in the top 10 this
Yeah.
season.
I think they impressed the judges last night.
Yeah.
Number 6, we've got Drake, another Missouri Valley Conference team coming in there.
Yeah.
And at number 5, it is UNC
UNC.
Greensboro moving the way up the list here, that huge win in Arkansas.
Mhm.
Number 4, we've got Western Carolina.
Western
the
Carolina.
undefeated.
Wow. Never having been
Catamount
ranked
fever.
before this year. Up
And
to
we are
4th.
moving the Catamounts. We want number 1.
We're gonna
Yeah.
camp out in Coolowee.
Bradley leading the way of the MVC teams despite the loss tonight at number 3 still.
Yeah.
Our top 2 probably not a big surprise. At number 2 though is
Oh,
Princeton.
really? That is kind of surprising that Liberty overtook Princeton. Oh, wait, we don't know that.
We don't know that.
Excuse me, we
It could
don't
be
know
Chicago State up there.
Yeah.
We don't. Here we go. Drum roll. It is. Yes, it is Liberty. At
Okay,
least for
yeah.
now. If they go 2-0 this week, they will not be number 1. They will not even be under the radar anymore. There's our top 10 poll. But on that note, let's pull this down and go to each of you for any other final thoughts. Salika?
Well, I feel like Columbia is about a week away from an honorable mention should they get 2 wins. But as far as my actual final thought, I'm going to go back to 2006 when we were talking about the Missouri Valley earlier. I guess one of the reasons they got away from the RPI was because the Valley that was a season where they supposedly cracked the code, where Wichita State, Bradley, and Northern Iowa all made the tournament. And
And Creighton got was it Creighton or
no, it was
Missouri State?
Missouri State, and
Worst
Barry Henson
snub
was the
ever.
one that got
Yeah,
snubbed even with an RPI in the teens, unfortunately.
yeah.
Rocco.
Quick final thought on a team we didn't get to touch on during the Big South portion of the show. The High Point Panthers, under new head coach Alan Huss, a guy I was really high on in the preseason show. Got to see High Point at Queens. They lost that game by 2. In fact, their 3 losses this year are in overtime to Hofstra in the championship game. I think it was the Gulf Coast Showcase. That Queens loss I mentioned, and then a 1-point loss to Wofford. But otherwise, a really great showing down in the Gulf Coast, beating Iona handily in the opener, and then a sleeper team in Illinois State in the semis. And I really am intrigued by this team to continue ascending and growing together. Of course, Coach Huss comes from Creighton, runs the Creighton system. Kamani Hamilton is a transfer from Mississippi State. I saw him live. Very long, very athletic, looks out of place at this level, just super dominant, rangy guy. Duke Miles can stroke the ball. And they got Abdullah Thiem, their best player, to come back from last year's staff. Still only a sophomore. Really, really played well in the Gulf Coast Showcase. I'm really watching this team closely. I think High Point was going to be my sleeper throughout the year, but they're really peaking already in November in some ways. And I think, they start pulling out some of these close wins. They've dominated most of the games they've won so far. But if they find a way to win some of these close games, watch out. They could really take off.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. That's fun, and they're a fun team to watch so far this season. Real fun to
Yes.
watch.
Yeah. They
Griggs,
play a fun style. Yes.
Griggs, you want to fish us out here?
Just real quick, and I know that like this is just a hopeless cause. Chad and I kind of got into an argument on Twitter earlier about what is an intent to schedule. The committee does look at the intent to schedule, but they look at who you successfully scheduled and whether or not those teams were as good or better or worse than expected. If you put together a schedule with teams that had been good recently but weren't good this year, the committee can cut you a break. Now, that really only affects the under the radar teams, I think, because teams from the power conferences get multiple opportunities built into their schedule anyway. But how about, come on, committee, how about an attempt to schedule? You can only evaluate once there, but you are aware, and if you're not aware, we have Rocco Miller here to help you because he's involved in scheduling. And Chad posed the question, well, if you call every ACC team and offer to host them and they all say no, is that like a realistic attempt to schedule? And I would say, no, it's not. But if every ACC team posted an ad saying they wanted a game and you called to answer that ad and all 14 of them said no to you, I would say that the attempt to schedule was there, and a lot of good under the radar teams can't get the games they need or as many to build the resumes that they want. So I'd like to see that considered. If teams refuse to play you, then you shouldn't be penalized for not scheduling.
That's way too in depth to try to figure out for a committee, though. Griggs is
no.
What effort?
We'll send them Rocco. We'll send them Rocco.
Okay,
we'll send Rocco to the.
I wouldn't mind Rocco being in the room here. I think that we'd have a lot better field. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Even though he would have had my Rutgers team out last year, still.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I think Rutgers. I think I have to go back and check.
We had Rutgers.
I think that was the team. I think that was the team I had in and got wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the only one I missed.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, whatever it was, I do want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be back again next week with our regular podcast. But on behalf of David Griggs, John Sleeka, Rocco Miller, check him out at bracketeer.org as well. I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again real soon.